Welcome to episode 28 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. In this episode's main segment, I interviewed Jason Spellman. Jason actually left me a nice comment on iTunes a few months ago and mentioned that he had recently optioned a screenplay with the help of some of the tips that I give out on my blog and podcast. You might remember that on the podcast, I thanked him and asked him to contact me. Well, he emailed me and we recently got on the phone for an interview. He offers a ton of tactical tips in the interview. He explains exactly what he's done to get his first screenplay optioned. And these are all things that everyone listening to this podcast could and should be doing. It's also very inspiring. He's just a regular guy with a family and a normal 9-to-5 job trying to carve out a career as a screenwriter. If you've optioned or sold a screenplay recently, please do drop me an email and let me know how you did it. I love hearing these stories. Hopefully you will too. So stay tuned for that interview. I'd like to thank this episode's sponsor, Screencraft. Screencraft is dedicated to helping screenwriters master the craft of screenwriting and succeed in the business of Hollywood. Sign up for free education and inspiration at screencraft.org. Screencraft is also very active on Twitter and tweets a ton of useful information about screenwriting. So if you use Twitter, I highly recommend that you follow them. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread the word about the podcast. I'd like to thank Thomas Ryan, Adam Strange, Zuri Jefferson, Amy Brown, and Bill Bridges, who left me some very nice comments over on YouTube for episode 26. Thank you to those folks. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts. Also, if you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional log line and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment, an interview with screenwriter Jason Spellman. Here is the interview. Welcome, Jason, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, I appreciate you inviting me. I appreciate it.
So to start out, I wonder if we can just kind of get a glimpse into what your current life looks like on sort of a daily basis, and then we'll kind of get into the specifics of your recent success with optioning a screenplay.
Sure. I currently do have a day job. I have an option screenplay, but that really doesn't mean a whole lot financially to me right now. So, I have a 9-to-5 just like everyone else. I have a 2.5-year-old son, and I take care of him when I get home, along with my wife. And our commute to work, our commute home, I'm just busy, but I'm trying to do what I can to get my scripts out there, to hopefully get them made into features.
Mm-hmm. So how much time do you spend per week actually writing?
That all depends on what stage I'm at. If I am in the, writing a screenplay, I'll jot notes throughout the day, and usually around 7:30, 8 o'clock, once my sun goes down, I'll have a couple hours to sit down in front of the computer and get something out. So I'd say 1 to 2 hours a day, and then on weekends I'll just go for a roll and maybe do 4 or 5 hour jaunts.
Uh-huh. Yeah, perfect. And so how many scripts do you estimate you can complete in like a year with this schedule?
Well, with writing, I really get into my characters and I let things kind of happen organically, if you can say that. And my first script, it took me 6 months to complete. Second script, it was about 5 months. But I like to sit on things a little bit, let them cook,
mm-hmm.
See where the characters will want to go and what will happen in the plot. So I don't rush through things. I don't work that way. I can't do it that way.
Mm-hmm. So let's dig into then this current option that you just got. Can you tell us a little bit about that screenplay? What's sort of the premise of the screenplay, and what is the genesis for that story?
Yeah, well, it's a horror comedy called Dear Dave. and it was kind of written out of necessity. Backstory is about 4 years ago, a friend of mine was host of an internet radio show, and he would review movies. He asked me to come on, and it went well. We had a great time, and he asked me to keep coming back, and I ended up co-hosting with him, and we formatted to where it wasn't just discussing movies. We actually got into the nitty-gritty of all the films, of budgeting, little-known facts, production, and then I started writing comedy for it. I wanted to keep things interesting, so I wrote sketches and jokes and bits, and it was fun. Mm-hmm. Then about after a year, that faded out, and he's like, what do you want to do next? I don't know. And so he says, well, let's do a movie. Let's do a short. How about that? That would be fun. You're a writer. I've got a friend who just graduated from film school. He's got a camera, editing software. We can get this done. So I came up with an idea. I pitched it to them. They loved it. We filmed it over about 6 weeks. A little 10-minute short. It's a zombie. It's a zombie comedy. It's very, very funny premise of a zombie coming home to a Dear John letter. And, and what would he do? Mm-hmm. And we finished it, wrapped it up, figured, let's put it on YouTube. It's going to blow up overnight. It's going to be wonderful. And the director's saying I can put it in the film festivals. And I'm like, yeah, you guys go ahead, have fun. And at that time, that was around the birth of my son. So I took a couple months off. And I started, thinking about it. And, well, what happens if it goes into a film festival? What do you get when you win? Well, I started researching online, and, you have to have a script ready. If somebody likes it and they want to buy it, not all the time will they just buy the idea. You got to have something out there. It's like, oh, I have to write a script. I don't know how to write a script. Let's Google, how do you write a script? So I started learning from different websites, and then I printed out scripts, and I read them constantly. And, okay, I can figure out how to make my words look like this. I could do it. Let me see if I can do it. And I got probably about halfway through when I found out that the director of the short didn't put him in any contest. He really didn't do anything with it. Uh-huh. So I'm like, oh, I've come this far. Let's see how far I can go. So I took the first 40 or 50 pages that I wrote, and I wrote them all in Word, by the way. And before that, I did it all in longhand. And I handed it out to people. I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. What do you got planned for the rest? Like, I don't know. Uh-huh. I don't know how to do this. So they're like, just keep going. So I kept researching. Structure, the 3-act structure, all that. And I ended up tying it up. People like the finished product, so I've come this far. Let's see what else I can do with it. And that's where I went back on the internet. Thank God for the internet. And I'm like, I finished my screenplay.
Just to interject here, though, this feature then was somewhat based on the short. It was the premise. It was a zombie comedy as well. Yes, basically, just extending that same premise out to long or feature length.
Exactly, and I was torn so much with it. How do I stretch 8 minutes out into a full-length feature on a one-note joke? Mm-hmm. That's basically what it was. And like subplots, other characters. Okay, this is how you do it. And then I ended up finishing it. Well, I'm finished with my screenplay. What do you do now? So I went to the internet, and that's where I found your site and how to format a query letter. Well, what's a query letter? What do I use that for? And I kept reading and reading and reading, went to other sites, and I, for some reason, kept focusing on the fact that I heard, well, you need an agent. You can't get into doors without an agent. Okay, well, I'm going to focus on getting an agent. Because I know a lot of producers won't talk to me if I don't have an agent. That's what I've learned from the internet. Mm-hmm. So I wrote a query letter, and I started sending out to agents. I got lists from the WGA, and then I just listed or searched for agents. And I queried everybody. I emailed, I sent faxes, I mailed out letters just to see what would happen. And about 2 months later, I start getting hits back. I couldn't believe it. I got a request for a script from a pretty well-known agent. She read it. She liked it. She had some notes. This is my first critique. This is my first professional critique.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought in my head she didn't get it just because of the notes that she gave me. She focused more on a certain section of the film that was a subplot. I wanted the movie from a zombie's point of view because there's not a whole lot of films that did that. They focus in on humans. Well, she was focusing in on the human, saying that you had too much zombie time.
Mm-hmm.
I go, oh, okay. So that was a pass. I even called some agents, and I had one guy ask me, well, give me your pitch. I don't know what a pitch is. This is my thought in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. It's Zombieland meets Office Space. And I went through the one paragraph synopsis in my head, and gave it to him. He said, I have too many clients. My roster's full. Good luck.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was it. I can't get this done. So I went back with my tail between my legs, and I took a couple months off to regroup and figure out what I'm going to do next. I ended up re-querying the agent that I talked to on the phone because he said he had too many people on his roster. But he didn't say, I'm not going to take you because you're new or I don't like the script or whatever. He hadn't even read the script. So I emailed him again and I said, you were kind enough to talk to me on the phone. You said at the time you didn't have enough people or you had too many people on your roster. What does it look like now? So go ahead and send the script. Oh, wow. Okay. Sure. I FedExed him a copy of the script. He called me a few days later. He says, I love it. It's clever. It's funny. It's original. But I don't have anyone that's interested in zombie comedies. And I thought that was it. You get an agent, your prayers are answered. They do all the work for you. They go out and they shop it here and there. I'm naive. I don't know any of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't happen that way. He said, you're going to have to do your own work. You need to contact producers. If you have a deal that's on the table, I'll be more than willing to help you. But other than that, I can't help you. And I asked him, can you help me just a little bit? Because I know nothing. And he referred me over to Inktip. He said, it's affordable. You'll get great exposure. Put it on an Inktip. Call me when you get something.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it for that. So I put it up on Inktip. And I started getting hits on that. They have the logline hits, and it was great. And after a couple months, I was getting script hits. And, people were reading it. I was like, hey, this is awesome, but this is not enough. I need to do more. So that's when I went and got the Hollywood Creative Directory. I went through every company on there. Even they'll have on there on the bottom what types of movies that they're interested in, and if they will or will not accept unsolicited material. I sent it to everybody. I didn't care.
Yeah. No, I ignore that. I ignore that too. That's just. I've even been on production companies that have written that in there, and it really means nothing. You just send it, and if they don't accept unsolicited material, they just simply won't respond, or they'll tell you not to call them again.
Exactly. No harm, no foul. So I start sending them out. I must have mailed about 200 letters. I got them all returned. And sometimes I would get them returned in certified mail stating that they didn't open anything. And sometimes I would get very nice letterhead from major production companies that I've saved and will frame someday because it's really cool. But then, with the emails I sent out, over a course of about 3 months, I sent out a little over 1,000 emails. And many of them came back that the email address invalid, or no thank you, we're not interested. But throughout the process, I got about 6 or 7 requests for the script itself.
So let's just stop on that point. So you sent out about 1,000 email addresses, and these were all taken from the Hollywood Creative Directory?
Hollywood Creative Directory, and I might have skipped ahead a little bit, but I did, when I finished the Hollywood Creative Directory, I got to IMDb Pro.
Okay.
Pro, I got that subscription, and that's where a lot of information came my way.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so you send out 1,000 query letters, and you're saying, roughly speaking, you got about 6 people that requested the script.
Yeah, that was it. And that, from what I hear, if you send out 100 and you get 1 hit back, that's the average.
Yeah.
It's a crazy average, but that's what I hit. What I'm selling or what I want out there doesn't really fit for every company. But at least some of them were kind enough to respond. But the ones that really got to me were the ones that requested the script and then wouldn't even give me the time of day to say, oh, no, we're not interested, or oh, we read it, it's just not for us. I mean, they would nothing. I still know nothing about those companies.
Yeah.
They wouldn't respond at all.
So then let's keep moving along in the story. So then you still have the script up on Inktip, and eventually you do get a hit on Inktip?
Yeah, I had 4 script requests within a week. And about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call. And on the other line, a guy says, hi, my name's Greg Huge. I've read your script. And I'm thinking it's one of the companies that requested it from my queries. My heart's beating. I'm racing. I run out of the house and go into the backyard so I can have some privacy. And I'm trying to keep my composure. It's just so exciting. And he's saying, I believe in this script. It's funny. It's hilarious. I want to get it made. Here's my offer to you. And I was, sure, yeah, that sounds good. Screaming in my head, oh my God.
Uh-huh.
And I tried to remain as professional as possible, but at the end I said, let me go over this with my agent because I need to get his approval on it. So he says, sure, talk to your agent, call me back and I'll draw up a contract.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's it right there, right? So I call up my agent and he's upset at me. He's upset that I talked to the producer directly and I didn't refer him to him directly, and that he was upset with the offer that the producer gave me. And that's not industry standard and blah, 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 blah. And he started to sound like a drill sergeant. I said, hey, look, I didn't approve anything. I said, it needs your approval. But, well, this is what you tell him, and don't tell him about me yet and bring me out at the last minute. I'm like, but he knows about you because you said I can use your name. Okay, all right, I'll call him back and I'll tell him what you want. I'm thinking in my head, agent, can you call and negotiate for me? I have it up to this point. Take over, please. Mm-hmm. But he's given me what to say. So I call him back. I call Greg back. I tell him, hey, this is what my agent wants. And he says, I can do that. Let me draw up the contract and I'll send it over to you. Yes.
So
done.
I wonder if you could give us at least some sort of rough estimates on what this option agreement actually looks like in terms of time frame. And I mean, you don't have to tell us the exact money amount, but are we talking less than $10,000, less than $5,000? Even just a ballpark figure would probably be helpful for listeners.
Well, here's the thing. The original offer was a dollar amount. It was a straight up dollar amount. And that's what my agent was upset about, saying, industry standard is a percentage. You get a percentage of the budget, of the production budget. So this is what you counter with. And so we agreed to a certain percentage of the budget, and it is not, it's a dollar option.
Okay.
Which are very popular nowadays. And when my agent found that out, he was extremely upset, quoting that he has had $1 million contracts go through his door. And I'm saying, but I am a first-time screenwriter. It doesn't matter. I can get you $1 million. Can you get me $1 million then?
Yeah.
Call him up.
And what sort of a budget does this movie need to get made?
Well, it's current. The really good thing about Greg is he keeps me up to date with everything about the shopping of the script. What companies he's going to. He forwards me the emails, the conversations, the text messages. He hasn't given me an actual dollar amount. He's given me what he would like for it. And, It's in the the seven figure. At one point in time, he said, we would like to do this between 30 and 40, but if need be, we can do it for a lot less. It's just, this is what we would like to shoot for.
Mm-hmm.
So do the numbers there, and, it's between those. I mean, it's not a super high budget movie, but it can be because there are effects in there, makeup, different locations, and so forth. So, and he wants to try to attract big talent to the script as well. I mean, who doesn't really?
Yeah.
But he's an independent producer that's, he's trying to work as hard as I did getting it out there myself. So, I trust him.
Yeah. And that's what I think a lot of newer writers don't understand, that, the producers are really in the same boat as the writers. People feel like, if I could just find that producer, but just exactly what you're saying, then the producer has to go out and sell the script to somebody else. So it's really, everybody's out there just trying to work as hard as they can. And these dollar options really are they're a fact of life, an unfortunate fact of life, but it's not like the producer's going to make millions of dollars off this thing. He's going to work his ass off, and he may never see anything on it if it never gets produced.
Right, exactly. We're all working for the same goal, and mostly all of us are working for free.
Yeah. So what's your current relationship with the agent like now? You said you finished a second script. Have you passed that to your agent? Is he a little more receptive to helping you now that you actually have some heat on this first script?
Well, now the terms of the option was a 6-month dollar option, and then in the contract itself, the producer has the automatic right to renew after 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's his choice. And the agent he read over the contract and he agreed to this. Well, when it came time for that to happen, I gave the agent the update. Oh, hey, by the way, the option's been renewed. He's in talks with blah, blah, blah. We're looking pretty good. And he sent an email back, you let the second 6 months go for $5? You're a dummy. And that was the last I heard of him. That was about 6 months ago. He didn't return any of my calls. He didn't return any of my texts, emails, nothing. I don't know if he's alive. He's an older gentleman. So that's pretty much a write-off, don't you think?
I would say that is a write-off. So, yeah. So, I mean, I think your story is classic, too, because, again, so many writers, they feel like, hey, if I can just get that agent, it's all smooth sailing. And, agents, just exactly what I said about producers, it's not like agents. There's very, very few agents that just have this magical touch where they can just, green light a script. They have the connections to get it to all the big studios. All the agents are working hard, too.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, most definitely.
How did you find the producers for your current script that you're sending out?
I went through every single email that I had sent out for Dear Dave, and the ones that responded and asked for Dear Dave, I sent them to them first. After that, I went through every other email, every other company, and I just sent it back to all those companies. And was able to weed out the ones that were not interested or it's not our type of thing. And also I went back on IMDb and researched through that. I also have it on Inktip. It's been getting a couple hits. I haven't had any script reviews or requests, but to me, it's a more difficult script. It still is a comedy. I write comedies. It's a sci-fi comedy, and with sci-fi, I kind of have a bigger budget on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if the smaller companies are willing to take it. And, the things that are selling right now as far as, mainstream or, the comic books movies or the movies that are made adapted from a novel or a remake. So it's going to be a hard one, but, I think it's hilarious. That's just my opinion because I wrote it, but it's going to be a harder sell. But it's a funny premise though.
Do you mind sharing the premise?
Oh, sure. Back in, I think it was 97, the Soranger mission to Mars, they sent up a rover. And kids are selected from a school, and they put little items in this capsule, for the Martians, when the Martians come out and see the rover. Well, a virus accidentally makes its way onto one of the items, and it kills off half of the Martian population.
Huh.
So Mars, 20 years later, decides to take revenge on Earth, and take revenge specifically on these three once kids but now adults. And they hunt them down and take them back to Mars for their punishment. And it's silly. There's a lot of slapstick, but there's also a lot of relation directly to what's going on at the time, in 1997. And with, I did research for this. I researched Delta rockets. You got to know what you're writing about, and you can't just be like. They want detail in scripts, and it helps to do the research.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think it's funny. I think it works. I've had people read it and say, "Hey, this is far better than the last one. You optioned the last one, so why can't you do this one? Why not? Why not? You have so many people saying, why? Why do you do this? Why take a chance? But other people do it. It's not that hard."
Yeah. So, do you have any advice, just to wrap things up? Here, do you have any advice for someone who is, maybe you 2 years ago, sort of at the beginning stages? Just some tips for people that are trying to get that first option.
Have super, super thick skin, and be relentless. Don't give up. Keep sending it out. Just keep on going and going and going. You're going to get so much rejection. Sometimes it'll hurt. It'll sting. But you got to keep on going and keep writing. You got, at the same time of marketing, you got to keep writing to hone your craft, and you got to keep reading scripts to know what's out there, and read the masters, the really good scripts, the ones that talk to you, or the movies that you like, so you can kind of mimic or learn how they did it. Mm-hmm. You gotta be relentless. You gotta be tireless.
That's solid advice from top to bottom. I'm curious, is there anything in your life, maybe in your childhood or something, that, prepared you for the sort of rejection that you're talking about? Is there something that you look back on and why you're able to take this rejection and not let it bother you as much as some people?
Whoa, that is a pretty deep question, Dr. Phil.
Well, I'll give you an example. I totally am in the same boat. The rejection doesn't bother me. I have an older brother who's about 2 years older, and 2 years is enough, especially with boys who are competitive, that he basically beat me. Growing up as a child, he beat me at absolutely everything because he was a little bigger, a little smarter. Just that 2 years is a big difference when you're a kid. So literally growing up, I would lose at everything and get beat at everything. And he's much more, I would say, of a perfectionist, and he doesn't like now to play games where he loses. Losing to me doesn't bother me at all, and I think that is part of what's prepared me for being a screenwriter. Is the rejection really doesn't, it's never really bothered me. I don't like it. I prefer it not to happen, but it's never really, the kind of things you're talking about, 1,000 query letters and only getting 6 script requests, that doesn't even strike me as that bad. And I think most people that would just completely, most people probably might not even persevere through that.
Well, I was adopted when I was little. I had an older brother that was a terror as well. I think I adopted this mindset. I was in a band for probably 11, 12 years, and the same thing sort of occurred. I picked up a guitar and said, they can do it, why can't I? And I became very successful in this Orange County band. And you get rejection from critics and from people, and, art is very subjective. And I experienced a lot of that and a lot of turndowns trying to sell CDs or trying to get executives to look at this or that. So I probably learned on the road while doing that. Mm-hmm. To become thick-skinned, and their opinion doesn't matter because, again, art is subjective. Someone is going to like it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, well, do you mind if just sharing? Maybe there's some way people could contact you, maybe your Twitter handle or your email address, in case people had a follow-up question or just wanted to get in contact with you for whatever reason.
Yeah, sure. I've got a Twitter account. I'm at Jason Spellman. That's Spellman. And my business email is kind of different. I'll send you a link to it as well. Okay. But it's LEITRIUS@gmail.com.
Okay. I will link to that. Yeah, send me that in the email. I'll link to that in the show notes. So if anybody didn't catch that, they can just go to the show notes and I'll have it there. They can click on it and get to it. Well, Jason, you've been very, very generous with your time. I really appreciate your coming on the show. I think this is an inspiring episode, and it's exactly, the kind of thing that I'm trying to inspire with my blog and my podcast.
Hey, and you know what? Thank you, because without you, I wouldn't know how to do half of the things I'm doing now. I mean, what you do for free, what you're putting out into the ether for free. Everybody listening right now, they need to go to your website. They need to listen to what you have to say, because there's not a lot of guys out there that are willing to really put it out and help somebody out. Mm-hmm. I mean, thanks, Ashley. You're doing a really good job out there. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. If you're looking for an in-depth analysis of your screenplay by an industry professional, I work with several consultants. Check out sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. All the consultants listed on that page have years of experience actually working in the entertainment industry. Right now, we have a real working producer who will give you notes on your script, and 2 screenwriters with actual screenwriting credits. These guys are not real pros. They're not gurus or professional consultants. They are people who actually work in the business. So if you're looking for some high quality feedback on one of your screenplays, check out sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. In the next episode of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Mark Andrushko. He's one of the founders of Scriptapalooza, which is a big screenwriting contest. He gives us some great insight into that contest specifically, as well as some solid screenwriting tips. I've had numerous people ask me about Scriptapalooza, so if you're wondering about it, definitely keep an eye out for that episode. In today's Writing Words section, I just want to highlight a few things that Jason talked about in the interview. Really listen to what he's doing. There's literally nothing he's done that you yourself can't do. If you're listening to this podcast, it means you have an internet connection, and that means you can do all the research and all the marketing that he did to option his screenplay. It's not easy. It does take some work, but it is possible. Also, I want to point out, Jason's not just sitting back waiting for his first option to get going. There's a good chance that it won't ever get made, so he's written another script and is out there marketing it heavily again. This is so important. Also, I don't want people to look at what Jason did and come away saying, okay, I just need to upload my script to Inktip since that's what worked for Jason. I've talked about Inktip many times in this podcast. I even interviewed the founder of Inktip, Gerald LeBaron, in episode 20 of the podcast. Definitely check that episode out. Inktip is a great service. I use it myself and I recommend it to others. But look at what Jason's doing. Sure, Inktip worked for him, but he's not stopping there. He's still sending out query letters and marketing to the contacts he's made in the industry. So keep that in mind. The wider marketing net that you cast, the better off you're going to be. I really like Jason's mantra, though. He sees other people doing something and wonders, why not me? So I'll just end this week's episode with a question. Why not you?